Before this video starts, I just want to give a massive shout out to all my channel members. If you want to receive a shout out, then become a channel member today and you'll be shown on screen like all these other channel members here. Anyways, enjoy the video. Japan, just like every other nation in the world, had both its peaceful times and its violent times. Perhaps the most famous of these violent events in Japanese history, at least outside of the Second World War, is the Sengoku period, sometimes referred to as the Warring States period, a name taken from a similar event in Chinese history. This period in Japanese history had spanned from the late 15th to the early 17th century, and these times were marked with near constant warfare between many of the Japanese lords as the emperor had lost their influence across Japan, leading to many smaller lords and their clans battling with each other. There are many famous warriors that have risen from this period, and for this video, 12 of these are the most relevant. But instead of discussing the warriors as they were in real life, I want to discuss their appearance in the battle cats, more specifically, how the community thinks of them. A while ago, I had put out a poll asking people their opinions on each of the war gods, and to give a reason as why they liked said war god. The way that I did this was through ranked choice voting, as to both give perhaps some of the more underrated war gods a chance to be in the spotlight, as well as to find more reasons as to why a war god is liked. The score was tallied by having people pick 3 of their favorite war gods, and each placement they enter would be how much points they gain. First place would grant an Uber 3 points, second place would grant an Uber 1.5 points, and third place would grant an Uber 1 point. All of the totals would be added at the end, and I would obtain the final ranking for this list. Just remember, this is not an objective ranking of each of the Ubers, but a simple subjective popularity contest, and all the points made in this video are points that those who like these Ubers have made, just condensed into a few paragraphs. Also, since every single war god is based on an actual historical figure, I think it would be pretty interesting to share a fact about each war god's historical counterpart in each of the rankings. With that said, if you enjoyed this community insight of how people view the war god units, then be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you wish to see another one of these sorts of popularity ranking videos at 30,000 subs. Also, comment down below what your favorite war god is and tell me why you enjoy them. Anyways, let's start going through the list. For the least popular war god, we have war god Mitsuhide, the most recent of the war gods, which could explain why they got the least amount of points, as most people wouldn't have had enough time to form a proper opinion on them. Mitsuhide lands here at 12th place with 123 points. Mitsuhide is an LD crowd controller and an attacker unit, being able to knock back Black and Angel enemies with an LD of 450 to 800, while also being able to summon a level 1 Surge between 350 to 650 range. Their LD and Surge mix allows them to be a surprisingly powerful LD attacker, sporting one of the highest DPS stats for an LD Uber. This has allowed those to use him as an actual attacker that can more easily snipe further back enemies and dish out consistent damage against them. Their crowd control potential is also amazing, with it being able to push a ton of Black and Angel enemies a lot further behind enemy lines, allowing ground to be recovered in record pace. Their summon also complements them extremely well, as they're able to deal good damage like all of the other summons, and it complements their LD, as the summon also has knockback, allowing it to be used to get enemies back into Mitsuhide's LD spot. The Surge is also able to complement this LD, as the Surge spawn is able to go up to 100 range in the blind spot, and with the way Surge hitboxes work, it can easily push an enemy back into Mitsuhide's range. As for his design, many point to their rather unique looking armor, with the helmet resembling deer antlers. The massive railgun-like rifle is also extremely flashy, and is where the cat resides on the unit. The real-life Mitsuhide is most famous for being the one to betray Oda Nobunaga and siege the Honnoji Temple, in which Oda would commit seppuku or ritualistic suicide to prevent his capture. While this unit may be the least popular war god at the moment, I could see them growing a massive following the longer this unit's been out, and especially if they get a true form. Now for a war god that people may be more familiar with, this is Immortal Yoshimoto, coming all the way down here in the 11th spot, getting 132 points, which is only 9 more than the newest war god. Yoshimoto, like Mitsuhide, is an LD attacker with crowd control abilities. They're strong against black enemies and with talents against Akus, and they're also able to weaken for a very long 9 seconds or 10.8 seconds against black enemies with treasures. With talents, they also gain survive and freeze resist as well. Fans of Yoshimoto feel that this unit is very underrated, especially as a Taki counter due to being able to tank their hits and being able to weaken Taki, which makes them a lot easier to deal with. They also appreciate his ability to deal with enemies that might be hard to reach, like Lenoir, and being able to work as a good general anti-black LD unit. Many fans of Yoshimoto also enjoy the Kitsune origins for this unit with their fox mask alongside the flaming fan. The real-life Yoshimoto was killed by Oda Nobunaga and his forces after taking several of Oda's castles and celebrating with sake after. During these celebrations, Oda's forces launched a surprise attack and 2 of Oda's samurai ambushed and took him out. The general sentiment for all the Yoshimoto fans is that they're a great counter-attacky, which can be annoying to deal with in some situations, and their bulk from the strong ability, along with their ability to weaken, can perform this job very well. The Kitsune origins with the flaming fan and fox mask also add a unique twist to this character design. These reasons are why Yoshimoto, despite not being so popular, are still adored by their fans, but they're all the way down here in the 11th spot. Riding in hot at 10th is Immortal Masamune, scoring 140.5 points, scoring 8.5 points more than Yoshimoto. Masamune is an anti-black and red unit that has a base knockback chance of 40%, but can be boosted to 70% via talents. Talents also grant them slow immunity and wave resist, and ultra talents grant them a level 5 mini wave. Masamune fans enjoy the fact that they have a fast attack rate, allowing them to be a pretty good generalist backliner for when other options aren't available. Their ultra talents have also allowed those who have invested a ton into Masamune to use him as an extremely potent crowd control unit due to how far the level 5 mini waves go. A lot of Masamune's appeal, even outside their abilities, is their really metal design, with the horse taking on a really radical design, with mouths on each knee and flaming hooves. There's also the purple hair and the bat wings, which are shared with Masamune. Another aspect of Masamune's design is that people like his really wicked shields, which also have bat-like wings covering the 4 sides of the shield, which catches on fire when Masamune attacks. Masamune is also an Uber that has had a history of popular Battle Cats videos. In this case, the video in which Lucas IV claims that Immortal Masamune is better than God Emperor Megidora due to their similar stats, but despite their similar stats, Masamune was considered bad or the $1 Uber, whereas Megidora was considered good or the $10,000 Uber. However, he goes into detail about the few key differences that make the case that Masamune is better. This video had a slight impact on how people perceive Masamune and how they should rethink their options on some of the more underutilized Ubers. The real-life Masamune only had one eye. While he had lost sight in his right eye due to smallpox as a child, there are a few theories on how he lost his eye entirely, ranging from him taking the eye out himself after being told an enemy could grab it and use it against him, or his trusted retainer gouging it out for him. This gave him the nickname of the One-Eyed Dragon of Oshu. This flaming warrior on his flaming steed prances their way down here to the 10th spot, but fans of Masamune like his good generalist stats, solid crowd control, and just how metal the design is. Slithering his way to the 9th spot is Immortal Amakusa, scoring a solid jump to get 179 points. Amakusa is an anti-black and Aku Uber that deals massive damage and is immune to surges. Amakusa has a rather unique role as an Aku attacker. Since they lack shield piercing, you would think that they would not be the best at attacking Aku enemies. However, their sheer damage output means that they can easily just brute force open a shield and allow Amakusa to nuke an Aku enemy that way. Their surge immunity also helps staving off any death surges that spawn when nuking an enemy to bits. As for his anti-black matchup, his time between his multi-hits can usually allow them to get a second hit on a black enemy that gets knocked back, and if it's an enemy like Lenoir, you can easily strip their health away. Amakusa's design is also an awe-inspiring steampunk contraption with a massive gear that turns with every movement, alongside the many gears inside his cloak. Another aspect of his design that people think is really cool is the mask that sits on a cross-like structure, as this is similar to how the real Amakusa was a Christian rebel who was executed via decapitation and had his head paraded around as a warning to other Christians that had thoughts of rebelling. In fact, Amakusa's rebellion was what led Japan to closing its doors to the outside world for over 200 years until the United States and other foreign powers came knocking. At the time of his execution, he was only 17 years old, and out of all of the Wargods in this set, he is the only one that comes from the period after the Sengoku period, though his rebellion took place only a little over 20 years after the siege of Osaka. This Wargod slithers mechanically down to 9th, but fans of Amakusa enjoy his nuking potential and the really cool ways his design takes from the real Amakusa. call in the cavalry for the Centurion Immortal Kahime marches here to 8th place, scoring 216 points. Kahime is an anti-black zombie slower with a 25% chance to Savage Blow and is able to weaken with talents along with being curse immune. Kahime is also one of the few female war gods, with Kahime being one of the more famous female warriors during the Warring States period, who participated in the summer raid in the Siege of Osaka in 1615. Kahime's design is a rather interesting one, as she's one of the few war gods to still have a somewhat humanoid form, at least in the top half of her design. The large horse-like bottom gives her a centurion look, a design choice that some find rather cool. As for her practicality as a unit, people enjoy using her for her rather great bulk, allowing her to tank several hits if need be. She is also rather slow, which could be seen as a negative to some, but it allows her to more easily catch zombies that unburrow, as they can get caught in her hitbox. Her slow is able to keep black enemies still, as most of them are rather fast, so being able to stop them from pushing too much is always a plus. The Savage Blow, while having a 25% chance to activate, is still strong, tripling her damage and being able to nuke most of her targets and providing a massive dopamine rush whenever it happens. Kahime has a rather unique place as a war god, being one of the few women in the set, and her sheer bulk in the Centurion design and her ability to keep black and zombies still have her marching to the 8th spot in the rank. Coming out here in 7th with a single point higher is one of the most famous lords of the Sengoku period, this being Oda Nobunaga, who was one of the first 3 Ubers in the game to receive an Ultra form to become Phantasmal Nobunaga. This Uber is a crowd control unit, being able to freeze Black and Aku enemies and being one of the 2 units to have Counter Surge, and is also gaining Wave Resist and Curse Immunity through talents. The main appeal to Nobunaga by their fans is his absurd uptime, having over 200% freeze up time against his targets, and having over 250% freeze up time against black enemies. Many fans of Nobunaga see this crazy uptime as a huge advantage over Bombercat, as his absurd freeze time can open up additional slots that might have gone to a freeze combo or 2. This allows Nobunaga to absolutely clown on many of the enemies that they face. The addition of Counter Surge in his Ultra form means that he can use a surge from an Aku enemy against them, especially against a boss like the Omens. Their Counter Surge also makes them rather unique gameplay wise, as the only other unit with this ability is a Bikurumin unit that hasn't been released outside of the JP version as of this video, who also targets Aku. Speed talents also allow him to simply rush down a bulkier enemy and perma-freeze them. As for the design is one of those designs that is overly detailed, but in a good way, with the corrupted cat to the right, to the wicked Oni mask in the center, to the dragon-like skull to the left, and the well-cladded armored figure at the top calling all the shots. The temple at the bottom is also a very cool design aspect, as this temple is a representation of the Honnoji Temple, the location of where Nobunaga committed his ritualistic suicide. Nobunaga is considered one of the 3 great unifiers from this period of Japanese history due to being able to conquer most of Japan before his betrayal. Phantasmal Nobunaga is a unit that has been somewhat of a divisive unit because of the existence of Bombercat. However, the Nobunaga fans came out swinging and sang their praises for this floating menace and got him here to the 7th place. When putting out the poll, Kenshin's Ultra form wasn't released to the English version, so I figured that it was going to follow the trend of having Phantasmal as the collective title. However, the actual English name ended up being Hellrider Kenshin, which honestly is the cooler name over Phantasmal. Kenshin had received 227.5 points, placing her firmly in the 6th spot on the list. Hellrider Kenshin is an anti-black attacker and crowd controller, having the strong ability, having a 100% chance to knockback, and has a 100% chance to summon a level 4 mini-wave. With talents, she can target Relic, be curse immune, and resist the weaken effect. Kenshin has some pretty good offensive stats, being able to dish out good damage and absorb a ton of damage thanks to her strong ability. She is also pretty speedy, which might make her somewhat difficult to use against black enemies. However, she has full backswing, meaning she stays behind after attacking for a few seconds, allowing your shorter range units and meat shields to move up, while Kenshin gets to sit back and prevent herself from diving headfirst into enemy lines. This is especially huge for black enemies, as they tend to be some of the most aggressive pushers in the game, so being able to stay back gives her extra survivability. As for her relic targeting, the fact that most relic enemies are mid-rangers means that she could easily stand outside the range of most relics and provide solid damage and field recovery. One of her strongest matchups is on Primitive Souls, where the main threats are easily countered by Kenshin, especially when she's in her Ultra form. As for her design, her Wicked Dragon vehicle is an absolutely stunning ride, along with her wonderfully made dress. Actually, speaking of her, the reason why Kenshin is depicted as a woman is because of a rather famous theory created by Tomeo Yagiri. He hypothesized that Usugi Kenshin was actually a woman after discovering a 16th century report in a monastery in Toledo where a letter was written to King Philip II about an Usugi being referred to as tia, meaning aunt in Spanish and Portuguese. This of course is disputed and has points for both in favor and against the theory, but this is the reason why Kenshin has been depicted as both a man and woman in many pieces of media, and the Battle Cats has decided to go with the Kenshin was a woman route. Kenshin as a War God unit made herself distinct by not only being one of the few women of the set, but also having a unique build that allows her to be a strong force in both the anti-black and anti-relic meta, and thus allowing herself to drive in at the 6th spot. Swinging in at the number 5th spot is Immortal Shingen, scoring a massive 383.5 votes, a huge jump from the last spot. Shingen targets only black and alien enemies, but with talents can add the angel targeting, and with ultra talents can also add the red, Aku, and zombie targets. Other talents allow them to break barriers and reduce their cost. Base Shingen is pretty restricted on where you can use it, as they only have 2 targets. However, thanks to their talents and ultra talents, they can be an absurdly powerful nuker at most stages, being able to deal 300,000 damage with nearly 40,000 DPS, which is one of the highest base DPS stats in the game. What's funny is that if you intend to go for a level 60 Shingen, then getting Barrier Breaker is just a waste of NP, as the sheer damage will just break the strongest of barriers anyways. The sheer damage is also reflected in his attack animation, as the comically sized axes give the feeling of him having the true raw power that kills most enemies in 1 to 2 hits. The animation is also extremely flashy, with each of the axes glowing an ominous fiery glow with symbols glowing a flame before slamming down. Fun fact, in the Japanese version, the sword uses actual Japanese markings, each meaning wind, forest, fire, and mountain, which is a reference to the Takeda crest, the clan that Shingen is from, whereas in the English version, they are replaced with generic mystical symbols, making them one of the few units with regional differences. Shingen is also really beefy, sporting over 300,000 health at level 60, allowing him to tank an absurd amount of damage. This beefiness is also another major factor on why people enjoy using him, alongside their absurd nuking potential. The real Shingen is notable for having a primary rival in Usugi Kenshin, in which the two would constantly battle against each other across several conflicts. It is noted that Shingen enjoyed these battles against his main adversary. His design is extremely flashy and raw, giving the appearance of a truly powerful unit that can indeed kill most enemies, and in this case, it really does show, and with having a ton of support by fans is why Shingen is in this spot of the list. Musashi Miyamoto, regarded as the best swordsman in all of Japanese history, winning over 60 sword duels, and is unique in that he uses 2 swords instead of 1 like most other swordsmen. Being the truly legendary figure he was, it was a given that the legend rare slot would be given to the most skilled swordsman in Japanese history, and in the context of this poll, this unit had received 436.5 points. Immortal Miyamoto is a single target unit that deals insane damage and is resistant against black enemies, as well as being slow and weak and immune alongside having Colossus Slayer. The first of many reasons why people like Miyamoto is his extremely high DPS, which allows him to absolutely shred most black enemies in a matter of seconds. In fact, at level 50, his DPS against black enemies is around 110,000, which is very similar to another War God that is well respected. If you add the Colossus Slayer on top of it, the DPS value skyrockets to an astronomical 175,000 DPS against Legrim, allowing Miyamoto to kill even the strongest Legrim in less than 20 seconds, making him one of the best units to bring for Black Orb grinding. You don't even need to worry about him dying, as Miyamoto has over 1 million effective health at level 50 against Legrim. Another enemy that gets absolutely shredded is Okame, which Immortal Miyamoto could solo, and even as Wargod Miyamoto could solo with combos. Another colossal enemy he is strong against is Super Hypo, as his great DPS easily juggles the beast and can easily tank the attacks present and swiftly kill them extremely quickly. Miyamoto fans recognize that the single target is somewhat of a con for him. This becomes less of an issue in the late to end game, as stage design moves from enemy spam to using small but powerful selections of enemies. As for his design, the almost comical sized swords both help make his hits feel big, but also are a representation of the real Musashi's true skill as a swordsman. His unrivaled skill in real life as a swordsman has translated well for many fans of the unit, with his huge build and amazing skill set puts the legend rare of the Wargods at the number 4 slot. Slicing and dicing his way up to 3rd place is Immortal Hanzo, securing a pretty large 588.5 points. Hanzo is an anti-black and floating unit that deals massive damage and can freeze them for 2.4 seconds, and is also slow and freeze immune with Colossus Slayer. For the many fans of Hanzo, his fast attack rate and extremely fast force swing allow him to be an excellent attacker against his 2 traits. Although his Colossus Slayer isn't much of a factor to his kit by his fans, as his main targets tend to be too overwhelming for Hanzo to handle properly. Hanzo is also extremely well respected as one of the best Ubers to use against Adherence to Virtue, the stage featuring one of the most difficult bosses in the game, Sage of Mind Soractis, a floating sage enemy. However, since the only other enemy present in the stage is Doge Dark, Hanzo is able to swiftly take them out and deal extremely good damage to Soractis in the process. While his freeze against Soractis at most gives an extremely brief period of relief, for most of his other targets, it can help prevent them from being too much of a hassle in most instances. Against black enemies, if they survive a Hanzo hit, there is a good chance that they're going to get knocked back, and the freeze is able to hold them in place to help your units march ahead, and for a ton of floating enemies, it can halt their ability to be an offensive threat or an annoying crowd controller for a good moment. As for his design, he's one of the only proper feline Wargods, being a type of panther or one of the big cats like lions and tigers. His attack animation is flashy yet simple, with a sword drawn from the sheath and giving the appearance of many rapid slashes. The real-life Hanzo is stated to have been one of the primary reasons for Tokugawa Ieyasu being able to fully unify the fractured Japan at the end of the Sengoku period, as he had been able to fiercely protect them when attempting to cross the Iga province, an area known for its deadly samurai hunters. Hanzo is the most recent war god to receive a true form, but even before this, he was already popular among the war god units, and this true form that came out as this poll was being conducted certainly gave him even more praise, and this is how Hanzo came here to 3rd place. Endowed by the power of nature, the mighty tiger known as Immortal Kaiji takes hold of the 2nd place spot, scoring 657 points. Immortal Kaiji is an anti-black tank that is immune to waves and gets stronger after losing half his health. He can also become resistant to the weaken effects and have his strength boost get even stronger through talents. Kaiji is a unit that is very much on the bulkier side, sporting almost 200,000 health at level 50, jumping to nearly a million effective health against black enemies. His rather tanky health stat allows him to stay on the field for a long while, and when he gets to below 50% health, he still has quite a bit of health remaining, and gets an insane damage boost at over 25,000 DPS. His range, while on the lower side of most Ubers, is still good enough for him to perform his job well. His range is good enough to where his wave immunity gets a ton of value, as an absolute majority of wave enemies are melee to mid-range at most, letting him be a solid addition against the various waivers that exist in this game, including the almighty Hermit Cat. In fact, when Floor 30 first came out, Immortal Kaiji was one of the best units in the game for this stage, as he was one of the only wave immune attackers in the game in general, and his damage output was far greater than Heroic Musashi, who at the time was the only non-Uber wave immune that could actually stay on the field for a while, though players back then would have known him as Legendary Musashi before his name got changed due to the previous Musashi we discussed before. A much more recent stage in which Kaiji sees a lot of use is Baby's First, considered one of the most difficult stages in the game due to the restrictions placed on which you can only use normal and Uber rares. A strengthened Kaiji is one of the few Ubers that is able to consistently juggle Doremi by sitting behind the base, with only Balrog and ultra-talented Mad Dr. Clay being able to perform similar feats without much setup. His cooldown is also surprisingly fast for an Uber, only lasting 67 seconds, meaning you can easily get 2 Kaijis out at the same time depending on the stage. As for his design, Kaiji's theme of growing a tree on his head is very cool. At first, it looks like just a normal set of hair tied up with him using a club. The second form now has a full-grown cherry blossom on top, with Kaiji carrying an axe. In his true form, he now wields the tree that was growing on his head as his main weapon. The fact that he is also one of the few truly muscular units in the game is also something that fans of Kaiji think is really cool. In real life, Kaiji as a person was known to be a hulking beast, as he was an extremely tall individual at the time and was also extremely strong. Kaiji is also said to have tamed a wild horse named Matsukaze, in which the two had an extremely strong bond with each other, and it is said that when Kaiji died, his horse had ran off and was never seen again. The hulking tiger, known for their immense bulk, damage output, and wave immunity, as well as his cool design of the Cherry Blossom Club gained from his own head, has been popular with many, so much so that he is able to climb all the way up to the second spot of this list. However, with all things like this, there can only be one that comes out on top. With that, I think we can finally reveal who the most popular war god is, but before I do, be sure to give this video a like if you're enjoying it, and check to see if you're subscribed or not. If not, then be sure to turn that button from red to gray to be subscribed, and comment down below what your favorite war god is. With that said, let's reveal the most popular war god. To anyone that is somewhat familiar with this game's units, it really shouldn't be a surprise Yukimura won the popularity contest, being able to score almost 1,000 points more than Kaiji with 1,569.5 votes, crushing any competition. For those that don't know, Immortal Yukimura is a rusher unit that deals massive damage against black enemies, and through talents, deals 50% more damage when below 40% health, and can be slow and freeze resistant. This unit's popularity can be attributed to the fact that it shares many similarities to one of the best units in the game in general, Awakened Bahamut. Both are rusher units that deal massive amounts of damage generally, which effectively makes Yukimura a Bahamut 2.0. However, in the late game, this unit's able to surpass Bahamut in power thanks to talents and not having its stat curve getting chopped up earlier like Bahamut's. By level 50, Awakened Bahamut is dealing 110,000 damage on his first hit, while talented Yukimura is only dealing 72,000 damage in his first hit. However, because Yukimura is much tankier and the fact that his strength and damage is comparable to a level 50 Bahamut hit, this makes Yukimura a much stronger rusher in the endgame. On top of this, Yukimura recharges almost twice as fast as Bahamut, meaning you're able to use them a lot more in battle. These facts alone that you can get a stronger Awakened Bahamut, who is already one of the best units in the game, says a lot about its strength. If you ask people what they think the top 10 best Ubers are in a meta sense, Yukimura is usually in that list somewhere. Oh yeah, these numbers are just for his generalist rusher abilities. Against black enemies, he is able to nuke most black enemies in an instant, if not leave them on their last legs. Yukimura, like Miyamoto, is one of the few units that can nuke Okame out of existence. Also, those that have Yukimura are able to get much more value out of investing NP into it compared to investing in CAT, as Heavy Assault CAT acts like a pocket Yukimura, but if you have the real thing, then there isn't much point in investing NP into the other unit, unless you're doing 4-star stages. That is not to say that CAT is bad, because they are definitely one of the best special units, but more so to highlight the absurd strength Yukimura has. As for his design, the unique eagle-like design and his cool-looking winged armor, which has its own set of wings tipped in crimson, give a vibrant and stunning look to the wings. The tips of his claws are also tipped in this crimson color, which flare up when attacking, which gives a stunning look to his attack animation. In real life, Senato Yukimura was an active force at the very last battle of the Sengoku period, in which he defended Osaka Castle as a part of the larger summer raid of Osaka in 1615. Near the end of the siege, he was killed by Ieyasu's forces, which lowered the morale of Toyotomi Hideyori, the leader of the last remaining group to not be under Ieyasu's control and his forces in the defense of Osaka Castle. Shortly after, many of Hideyori's forces would retreat and Hideyori himself would commit seppuku a day later in the castle. Shortly afterwards, Ieyasu would finally gain control of all of Japan and Tokugawa rule was able to go unopposed for over 250 years and put an end to the Sengoku period. Yukimura is called the last Sengoku hero for being one of the last warriors to fight against Tokugawa control. Just as the real Yukimura was the last Sengoku hero, Immortal Yukimura cements himself as the last unit on this list, with his unrivaled rushing strength to his elegant hawk-like design placing him here in first place. These community ranking videos are always fun to do, as I enjoy reading what everyone thinks of each unit, but they take a long while to do. But if you want to see another one of these community rankings, then be sure to subscribe to get me to 30,000 subscribers, and while you're down there, be sure to give this video a like and comment down below what your favorite Wargod is, as I would be interested to read all about it. Also, shout out to the following channel members: Something Something YouTube, Dr. Deadly, Oberless, and Zeta22 for being silver members or higher. If you want to receive a shout out like these channel members here, then become a silver member higher today, as becoming a channel member helps support me in a way that helps keep the lights on. Also, channel members receive an exclusive role in my Discord server, for which you can find a link to in the description down below. With all of that said, I hope you all have a wonderful day.